What's up, y'all? Welcome back to part 2, episode 2. Right, this is Tyler. Last time we talked a little bit more about his time in the service. Just a little bit dipped into the VA stuff where he's working at the VA, and so I wanted to have a second part where we dive more into that because it's a important topic that, man, you see it on the news all the time. On TV about, problems at the VA. And we talked a little bit about this in my time in the fire service, and probably yours too, that, experiences with the VA and how not great they were. And that was my first experience with the VA, except for when I went through my paramedic rotations, and they treated me really great at the VA. But when it came to taking patients there, it was not great. And so now Tyler can give some insights on a little bit more of that, because he's kind of in the administration level of it. So welcome back, Tyler. I appreciate you coming on again for this part 2. But we're going to talk about the VA, and then a couple other topics that we touched on are, since he was a firefighter too, brotherhood in the fire service, and this whole victim mindset thing that we both feel like it's real prevalent in the world right now. And so we'll touch on those kind of towards the end, because I think it needs to be put out there. It's kind of that that new saying that I got, the new shirts and stuff that I come out, that I'm pushing. Mama, make America masculine again, right? So I think there's a lot of soft men in the world right now, and I think that's partly why we are how we are. So we'll touch on that a little bit too. So Tyler, so tell everybody how long you've been working at the VA now, and we'll just get into it.
Yeah, sure. So I've been working at the VA for 5 years now. 5 years now. I'm not in the administration. I work in admin. So
Admin. Okay, I got
I don't get. I'm not a shot caller.
it.
I've been a
Yeah.
paid VA for 14 years. Um, Off and on. The first thing I did when I got out of the military is I went straight down to the VA and got enrolled in benefits, which is one of the problems that we'll key on here at some point throughout this. Um, I've been working there for 5 years. I started off working as a medical instrument tech. So I basically did procedural. I helped with procedures and maintenance and cleaning of in the gastric and intestinal lab. So endoscopies, a whole slew of things that they did there. And you're responsible for assisting the doctors and nurses in the procedures, and then the maintenance and cleaning of the scope. After
That's
that,
funny. That's funny you did that. I didn't know that was part of. I there was a hospital, a little surgical hospital not far from my fire station, and they paid us as off duty medics to go do that very thing. So, yeah, that was an interesting way to make a little extra money.
yeah. It's not bad. It's not
Yeah,
bad that jump over there, the more clinical side of things. Um, or hospital, like fixed building kind of stuff, medical Medicare. Um, After I was in MIT, though, I kind of you're kind of railroaded in that position. To the only way you really advance further is to basically go back and get your RN. And as we talked about, I wasn't interested in going to clinicals or dealing with national registry no, I was done with all that. Like I didn't want
yeah.
anything. So a friend of mine was getting ready to start a new department in the VA, and they offered me a position over there as an administrative AMSA, as an advanced medical administrative. person, and which is largely scheduling and clinical maintenance as far as where the grids are at and things like that. And you're assisting. You answer the phones a lot. You're dealing with interacting with the veterans on a face to face basis, checking them in, checking them out, scheduling them, dealing with their if they have any issues. You're kind of like the first point of contact between their primary care team or their provider in some way, whether it's a nurse or a practitioner or a um, but yeah, I made the switch over and I've never looked back. I'm not really ever. I don't really think I'll ever be in a position where I'll go back to patient care. It's a lot easier when you don't have the stresses of all that
Right.
kind of over your head. But yeah, and that's basically where I'm at. That's my credentials as far as VA goes. But
So you're the, like you said, you're kind of the first point of contact with veterans, and we talked about this off camera before, um, about our sentiments about how VA can be tough to deal with. I saw it from a paramedic side, and I saw the frustration in the veterans that we took, because the level of care that they were expecting and wanting wasn't anywhere near the level of care they were getting. Not at that time anyway. I don't. It may. This is a VA in Dallas. It may have changed now. I don't know. I'd have to really dig in to find out if that's changed a little bit. But is that in y'all's area? Is that still a sentiment? Is that
yeah,
way?
well, from a first responders point of view, you really what happens is that we had both discussed before about our interactions with their emergency rooms at the various VA. I don't think there's an emergency room around the country that is a VA emergency room. Probably doesn't have the exact same story. I think what basically it boils down to is that they still refer to themselves as an ED or an ER or whatever you want to, emergency room or emergency department.
Right.
Um, which it's not. It's
Yeah.
not a level one trauma center. It's not a level two trauma center.
Right.
It's probably in most cases a level three or something along those lines. So you're not really like if you're breaking an arm, you're far better off going to another civilian hospital. And in most places, the VA will tell you that as well. That being said, unfortunately, a lot of the older veterans they still view it as an emergency room, so they'll be very adamant with you in the back of the ambulance, like, no, sir, I want to go to this place. There
Yeah.
are um, there are programs right now that are in effect where if a veteran is in an emergency situation, go to an emergency room at a hospital near them. Um, Within 72 hours, if they call a specific number, the VA will, in some cases, I don't want to give a blanket statement here because that's another way that we breed disappointment in the VA
Right.
is through blanket statements. And then somebody finds out, unfortunately, oh, wow, I didn't qualify for that.
Yeah.
But depending upon your eligibility and depending upon where you're at, your ability to go to a private hospital is also there. That being said, um, most of the nurses and all the providers, they're giving the same level of care that you get anywhere else in any other hospital. I mean, they still have to face the same accreditation and, they have to pass all the same level of, you know, accreditation and training that any other doctor or nurse or, medic has to go through. Um, Now, where you really have the issue is in the bureaucracy. Bureaucracy is the great killer of the VA. And what you have is you have a collection of administrators at the top that don't really know what they're doing and probably aren't qualified for those positions. I mean, you look at a privately ran hospital, and then you look at the way the VA is structured, and the VA is this giant bureaucratic arm of the government, which is divided into all these different these different departments, and it's not really well explained to a lot of veterans.
Yeah.
And what happens is that one of the most common things I'll see that happens. And if I'm getting a little off course here, just steer me right back where I need to
Oh
be.
yeah. You're right.
This is a big problem. One of the most common things I'll see is first, you'll see a lot of veterans will wait until they have a problem, and then they decide like, okay, now I got to get the VA involved because this is all of a sudden, whether they're in their 60s and all of a sudden they get a cancer, they've had private insurance their whole life, work their butts off, good red-blooded Americans that, and good veterans that deserve all the care that they can get. But the issue is the VA is a bureaucracy, which means it takes it time to get rolling. Once it's rolling, it can effectively give you what you need, right? But it's got to get rolling first. And if you wait 60 years to show up at the VA, and then when you show up, you've got cancer, or you've got, one of these other, like you develop type 2 diabetes and you're trying to find a cheaper way to get your insulin or get your strips or whatever you need. The VA, it takes a while to catch back up to you
Yeah.
because going, oh, I've got to find you.
Uh,
I've got to prove that you're a veteran. I got to establish your eligibility, and then I can start looking at things. But even after all that, you still have to establish the primary care provider, and then go through the getting your consults placed and all these. Um, so it is a system that is slow to catch up, and you see a lot of issues with that. A veteran will walk in like, well, hey, I'm 70% service connected because of this letter, and you're like,
yeah.
yes, you are, sir, but you're dealing with the veterans comp and pen. That's not veterans health care. That's a whole different animal. So you have got to go. Not only are you once you get your disability as your service connection, you've also got to establish with a primary care provider, or you've got to get yourself established in the healthcare side of things.
Yeah.
So there's this lag oftentimes. Like I've seen it firsthand in the back of the ambulance where a gentleman's like, "Hey, I'd like to go to. I'm a veteran. I want to go to the VA." And you're like, "Oh, good." And yeah, I can't remember what he had, but it was like a respiratory infection or something like
Yeah.
that. And he shows up there, and just like everybody's got the same, a very similar story where it's, "Oh, I sat there and watched this guy on a cot for an hour waiting for a doctor to get there."
Yeah.
In a lot of cases, it's just flat out, right? Okay, I'll say what it is, and they make you wait out there because they're screwing around in there or doing something else. There's not a sense of urgency because it's not really an emergency room.
Right. Yeah.
But in a lot of cases, and in the case of my specific situation, the veteran had never established in the VA before. So he rolled into the VA. So it took him an hour to even find the guy in the system and establishes, these things. And they're going to see you. They're going to see you. They can't turn you away if you're a veteran, right? But it's going to take them a while to get it all set up because nothing's been done prior to this.
Yeah.
You can't walk into I can't just walk into random places that, well, I mean, I guess you could, but
Right.
again, to utilize the VA, because it is the branch of the government, you have to deal with the bureaucracy, and that's one major part of that. You know, um, Staffing is another huge part. The VA is almost always chronically understaffed. We've got, if you went to any regular hospital, you're talking about most nurses have between 3 and 6 patients on a consensus. At the VA, it's not uncommon to have 8, 9, 10 for one nurse because we don't have the nurses. We don't have the nurses. We don't have the providers.
Is
You know,
that is that because they just won't they won't cut the money loose to hire more nurses, or is it just lack of funding? Is that the
well,
reason?
everything with the VA is so like nebulous and convoluted that yes, that's staffing or cutting the money loose is an issue. Funding is an issue. Um, Finding providers and nurses that want to work at the VA is an issue. And then the other part of all this, the kind of one of the smoking guns in all this, and it kind of goes back to the victim mentality, is the veterans themselves. It's very hard to find nurses that can stand the work at the VA. We're not a patient base that is particularly grateful. We're not a patient base that is particularly patient, and due to all of the large portion of us having post traumatic stress,
Yeah.
and um, in some cases, like let's say with the Vietnam veterans, they already have, because of the way they were treated when they first got home, they have the mentality that everybody's kind of out to get me or screw me over, and it that kind of bleeds into the way they interact with the administrative staff and the nursing and doctors and stuff. So anything they hear or anything that happens that they're not particularly a fan of, they tend to have an overreaction, which can scare some people. And this, I'm not making this, I'm not trying to make blanket statements here with this, but anybody who's worked at the VA can tell you one of the hardest jobs to do is sit out front and interact face to face with veterans. Things happen. Appointments get canceled accidentally, and appointments get canceled by the veterans, and they forget about it, and then they show up for it, and they're angry because you know they're not getting seen that day because of something, and they have every right to be angry about these things.
Right.
It's a frustrating situation. Again, I've been a patient for 14 years and an employee for 5. And I've seen the things that happen to me that I used to get mad about happen, and then you're like, oh wow, so this really is out of a lot of people's hands.
Yeah. So, man, yeah, I'm glad you brought all that up. I honestly never thought about that aspect of it, about the patients that you're dealing with. Now, being a paramedic around the ambulance for 12 years, yeah, you know, eh, it's not just veterans that are that way,
Oh, I know.
but, but, uh, but that makes a lot of sense. You got people who are already uptight and have issues, and then it's almost like throwing gas on the fire every time you show up there.
Yeah.
Um, and man, and I always say it I got a lot of respect for nurses. Just from I did, when I was going through my rotations as a paramedic, I think we did 7 months or something, like 6 months or something like that. In rotations, you had to go Parkland ER here, which is the big trauma hospital, and Baylor, same thing. We had to go through, and we had to go through the burn unit, work in the burn unit for a couple of weeks. Had to go labor and delivery. We had to go, we had to go everywhere and do rotations. VA was where I did my intubation stuff, where they were doing actual open heart surgery, which I was super impressed with. Like that was, I thought, man, this is top level stuff they're doing here. And that was really cool. And like I said, they treated me, and I learned a lot there. But, you know, man, I could not be a nurse in an ER.
My wife's first position at the VA, because my wife is also an employee of the VA, she's been with
Yeah.
10 years, was on a cardiac step down unit, which again, the VA is similar to the military in that, it, like, yes, it may be the main goal of it may be a cardiac step down unit, but you're also going to get overflow in there. You're going to get like people that are just, regular floors and NICU, or not NICU, I'm sorry, because we don't have that at the VA, but sick you at there.
Yeah.
You're going to see a lot of that get that kind of spill over into that area. But it's, I'm trying to think here how to order my thoughts on this. It's hard to give out high level of really satisfactory, like, and I don't mean the standard of care. I don't mean the standard of healthcare in this, but it's hard to please the veterans when you're already at a very low consensus, or already at a very low um, amount of nurses on a shift per floor, and you got maybe one or two providers there. In Cincinnati, we have it's a learning hospital, so we'll get a lot of the fellows coming over from UC and places like that. So it's very fortunate. We get a lot of providers that come over as well,
Yeah.
which again is another one of those kind of issues where you look at funding and things like that, because we have providers that'll show up and work 1 day a week, and they get full pay, full
I
benefit,
remember, yeah,
full
you were
retirement,
telling me, you were
everything.
telling me about that. They
You know,
just come for one day and
yeah,
get a nice little paycheck.
yeah, and we've got there's been issues where we have providers that will literally say they're there for appointments, but they're not there for the appointments, but they're still collecting a check.
Oh
You
boy.
know,
Yeah.
it's a very fine line it has to walk, because one, it's, you're trying to attract providers in, right? And that's the hardest thing, because we can't pay. The VA can never be able to be. A great example would be GI. You've got, if you're a private sector GI doctor, you're making $10,000 a pop for one procedure, and you
Right.
turn and burn. You might knock out 20 in a day.
Right.
When you're a VA doctor, you're not getting paid per patient, right? You're not getting paid by the procedure. You're getting paid by the VA, and it's hard for the VA to compete with that level of lucrative care or for the doctors. When you graduate, med school and you finally get out of your residency, you're ready to go practice, you can you can pay off your med school in a few years working on the private sector. If you work at the VA will pay it off after years if you continue to work there, and which is good, but it's not, you're not getting that money. The big main thing with them attracting in providers and nurses is I should say providers, is the lifestyle though. You have a lot more free time working at the VA. You're not on call in most cases. We do have doctors that are on call. Again, the VA is hard to really kind of dig into because they've had to fix the problem by making more problems so many times that everything becomes kind of a case by case, situation to situation, you know, and so it makes it very convoluted. But again, creating an environment where we can attract best nurses, best doctors, it's hard. It's hard
Yeah.
for them, right? Um, and you
What's
can't
the fix?
fault.
What's the fix? I mean, how do you
Well,
make it right to where doctors and providers are wanting to come work there, do more work there?
we've got to create an environment where we have the funding for them, and we've got to advertise better. And again, it kind of comes back to it also comes back to us, the veterans side of things.
Yeah.
We've got to be able to talk to people more like humans. And I'll come out and just flat out say, uh, most veterans are just absolutely just horrendous when it comes to their interactions with staff and providers. Um,
Yeah.
well, okay, a lot of veterans are. Again,
Yeah.
I'm trying to typecast here, paint with a brush. But I mean, on every single day I'm at work, I'll get MF'd by at least one person, and it's over
Yeah.
something. Just I don't think they particularly are mad at me. I think it's just a person there that they can MF, and it happens daily, and it's always it's some and a lot of times they're very what happened to them is right. They have every right to be mad about it.
Right.
Sometimes it's not,
They're
which
just mad.
it's hard to say, hey doc, hey nurse, come here, take a cut and pay. Yes, you get weekends off. Yes, you get all major holidays off, but the clientele you have is going to treat you completely disrespectfully. They're
Yeah.
going to at you. They're going to have, and you cannot do anything about it. A really good example of this is, as I was saying, my wife worked on a NIC or a cardiac step down unit for years at the VA, and routinely she would almost every single day she would come home in tears, and it was partly due to the way that they get treated, or they did get treated by the administration and the staff there at the VA, and the other half is the way that they just get you know beat up, sexually harassed. They get grabbed all the time, and there's just no recourse because these guys can do these things, and there is no recourse because you have to give them care. It's the law. Like we have routine, uh, regular, offenders coming into the VA that are known for, being on registries and things like that, and you still have to give them care, and they can act in the most horrendous ways.
Yeah. That's crazy.
You still have to give them care.
That's
Which
crazy to me. I
again,
mean, I understand giving them the care, but man, it's like, so you just get a free pass on acting like an asshole. Just,
yeah,
see, gosh, as a husband or, that's my, like, oh boy.
it's hard. It's really hard. But again, if we're going to say that there's the VA, which the VA is a problem, there's different values that we have to plug into the equation. And one of the values that we have to plug in is 100% veterans.
Yeah.
We miss appointments. We're rude when we're at appointments. We don't take responsibility for anything. We literally, they're the vast majority of veterans are good veterans, right?
Yeah.
They're great people. They're wonderful to work with. I literally is the love of my life is being able to help them, and it's this minority of the loudest wheel, the squeakiest wheel,
Yeah.
happens, and it just so happens that when that wheel squeaks, it's screaming and dropping f bombs and throwing things around, and so it makes it hard to really recruit the best and bring the best in when you
Right.
have to deal with things like that, you know?
And of course I don't know it. I'm not going to pretend to know anything about. I know how money's raised and all that stuff for city governments, fire departments, and shit like that. I understand that, and maybe it's the same, but I'm not going to pretend to understand how when I see things like these billions of dollars that we're sending to places like the Ukraine and things like that. And I put these, I'm like, and then I hear, oh, well, the VA is severely underfunded and, all this stuff. I'm like, it makes no sense to me. I
Yeah.
don't, it's like, you obviously, the money's there somewhere. You have it. And it just boggles my mind why they won't dump that kind of time and money
Do you
into
know
the,
another branch of the government that does well with it?
what's that?
Did you know another branch of the government that does well with the money we give them?
Right. No. Yeah.
Uh,
It's,
a great example is, there is a level of this in which I need to kind of protect myself,
I
but
get it. Yeah.
we have in Cincinnati here, we had a very similar issue where, they were expanding our hospital and millions of dollars were lost. And the person that was in charge of this didn't get fired. They just got redirected to a different VA, and that happens. That's one of the issues with government in general is the fact that once you're hired, it takes like an act of Congress to get rid of them, and it doesn't matter whether they're a toxic person or, we
Yeah.
had employees at the VA that were caught multiple times watching pornography on their phones and on government computers, and they're still working there. We've had guys steal from the Omni cells, and they're still working there. And it's systemic across the board. Nepotism is present a lot in the VA. There's a lot of HR is one of our biggest issues. The fact that we can't get good HR people. It takes, we'll get a great doctor or a great nurse decided to come in, and it takes them a year and a half to get hired because HR is just flat out worthless. The same thing goes the other way as well. If we have a toxic person that we have the paperwork trail on, you can't get rid of them. And or they spend so much time figuring out ways in which to deal with this person that they either promote them and push them into a corner, or they just push them in a corner. Still,
That's crazy.
cause,
It's crazy. So they figured out, it's almost like they figured out they, they know that it's hard to get rid of them and they're collecting a paycheck and they're not having to work as hard there as they would somewhere else. And
absolutely.
so
And
you
that
just,
goes back to the veterans experience too. When you have a situation where nobody's one of the funny, it's not funny at all, but one of the things that, like, as if I took myself out of this as a veteran, right? Let's say Tyler's not a veteran, just as an employee of the VA, I know sitting at my desk, if I was particularly rude or particularly abrasive veteran, um, and the veteran said, "Oh, I'm going to contact the White House hotline. I'm going to contact the patient advocate. I'm going to do X, Y, and Z." Nothing's going to happen to me.
yeah,
Nothing's
you're like, go ahead. So,
exactly, and you'll hear a lot. Now,
yeah,
there's people who chronically abuse the White House hotline, chronically abuse the patient advocate line because they didn't get the opiates that they were desperate for. They didn't get something else that they were desperate for.
right.
And so it's kind of one of those things where it's like if you get a million calls and 99% of them are BS, the one call gets missed.
Right.
Uh, but as a veteran, I've also had the experience of having extraordinarily negative reactions or interactions with staff and clinics, and I contacted the patient advocate. I contacted the White House, and nothing happens. It is a very unique example. I mean, it's socialized medicine. If everybody wants to talk about how wonderful our healthcare is in Europe or wonderful healthcare is in Canada, you're looking at socialized medicine. VA is what socialized medicine be in the United States.
That's kind of what I'm like, man, that's exactly what it sounds like. I don't,
It, it is across the board. It's a bureaucracy. You know, the bureaucracy always wins. Paperwork always outweigh, everything else. And it's the VA is broken down. Really, the way the VA is even structured is not adequately explained to a lot of veterans. So, like, they don't understand the VISN system, right? So where I'm at, it's VISN 10. Where you guys are at in Texas, I'm not. I'd have to look it up to see what VISN it is. Our VISNs don't talk to each other. Our VISNs don't. It's not like, if everybody's in the Army and you're in the 101st or you're in the 82nd, the ranks. You basically can seamlessly transfer from the two, right?
Yeah.
VISN 10 doesn't talk to VISN 8, 9, 7. It just does its own thing, and it applies for money for the government and funding for the government to do its projects. And um, it's structured like that. And regularly, we'll have veterans that'll come into town or go out of town on vacation, and they just want to be able to show up places and be like, "Oh, hey, I need to get care," and you're like, "Well, we have no record of you being a veteran." What do you mean? I'm in this. I go to the VA all the time. Well, where do you go to the VA at? Cincinnati. Well, sir, this is Fort Myers, Florida. So it doesn't always seamlessly work.
That's
So
crazy to me. That's a
there's a lot
government,
of stress.
they're a government organization and they're not connected at all. It
Exactly.
blows
All,
my mind.
all
Wow.
that. Yeah, all that stress just builds up in veterans interactions, right?
Man, I didn't know that. That's something I didn't know. I thought they were all connected. Same system, same everything. That's
Nope.
crazy. I had no idea. Man, and so it sounds like, I mean, you got frustration and, all that coming from the nurses, doctors, the provider side. You got all this frustration coming from veterans, and it's just a constant butting of heads. And that's why everything takes so long. I mean, it's like, and then you got, man, what a crazy system. Cause you got, HR that's terrible. You got, everything takes a long time, like you said, to get flowing. And so then the frustration builds on the veteran side who's already pissed. And, and then you got nurses who are tired because they're overloaded with patients and, getting harassed and shit all the time. And,
Yeah. Yeah.
gosh, man, it sounds like the most broken system you could possibly have in a bit. It's like you go, if I took a business and went, how do I completely fuck this business up?
Yeah.
What is what is it that I need to do to completely ruin what we're doing? And it sounds like it. That sounds like it, but yet it still keeps running.
Throw millions of ticked off veterans with post traumatic stress into that, and
Yeah.
it's a pressure cooker for that. That being said, though, for the vast majority of people that I interact with on a daily basis that I've either had as a patient or
Yeah.
I've done creative stuff for, they're all wonderful people. They are. They're grateful for the care they're getting. Um, and the staff and the providers and everybody are have wonderful interactions with them, right? I work at a community-based outpatient clinic, and it's 17 minutes from my house. And, everybody in that clinic does everything they can to have the absolute best interaction they can with
Yeah.
the. You have nurses that stay late and providers that stay late, especially nurses. The nurses they're getting paid by the hour. They're not getting extra after the, their day ends at 4:30 and they're there till 6, just trying to wrap things up, and they're not getting paid for that.
Yeah.
You know, they're helping other veterans. It's not like our phones turn off at 4:30,
Right.
right? 4:30, they could walk out, they could shut everything down, finish their charting then tomorrow, and then come back. But they don't. They stay and they deal with the phone rings nonstop because people are always having issues. Um, so if I had anything to say to my own fellow veterans, I would say that there needs to be a little bit more understanding and grace and patience. It's hard. I know it's the government. They screwed us all over at some point, but the individual people that are in there doing your care, they're not the government.
Yeah.
They're just like you. They're just, if they could fix the problems, they would, but they can't.
Yeah. Well, that was part of, even when I took patients there, even though got later in my time, we would do our best to convince him not to go, you know, and we knew it wasn't a level 1 trauma center or anything like that. And so we would, if it was something crazy like that, it was like, no, you're not going there. Like, we're not taking you there.
Yeah.
But, but it got to a point where we would purposely tell a guy like, hey, if you take you there, here's what's going to happen. And
Yeah.
pretty much they already knew. They
Yeah.
already knew what was going to happen because they'd been there before.
Yeah.
And then, and so I would have these interactions with some of the nurses and stuff like that. But you look and you go, man, I didn't ever necessarily blame the nurses and things like that, because you could see the frustration on their face too,
Yeah.
and because they're tooling around there trying to take care of everybody, and you realize the reason I'm sitting in this hallway while they're still on my stretcher after an hour is because they got 8, 9, 10 patients already, and they're just trying to figure out where to put this person and who's gonna be the one to take them. And
Yeah. And especially if it's on a weekend, because
yeah,
again, the VA may, depending upon what city you're in or how big the VA is, the VA may only have a set number of on-call doctors,
yeah,
and and this is the other thing, they may only have a set number of on-call specialists, and that list is even smaller. So if a guy shows up at the VAER and he's got a gastro issue, and you're waiting on GI docs to get there, that guy's got to come in from home, or that guy's got to come in from someplace else. So time is everything. You
yeah,
know, if this guy's waiting in a bed in the ER and somebody comes in, yeah, it's a the first step I would say in solving the issues of the VA is getting rid of the blame. Stop pointing blame. Stop trying to say that it's the VA's fault, or it's the vet's fault, or it's the provider's fault. It would just be using, you know, looking at what works in other hospitals and structuring it that way.
yeah,
You know, the one of the and this is going to probably be an unpopular thing for me to say on my end, but in a lot of cases, the high ranking administrators at VA are medical doctors and nurses themselves. Which, if you go and look at a private hospital, they're business people.
right,
You know, people they don't deal with patient care. They deal with the business aspect of the VA. Customer service, customer experience. All these things. The VA just hires nurses and doctors to do that.
yeah,
And a situation where it's like, well,
mm,
I mean, are they capable? Are they competent enough to do that? Probably. But are they the best person with the experience needed for that position? No, they're not. For them, it doesn't always translate well. And
right,
you know, maybe we'll see this new Dodge government coming in. Maybe they'll fix some things.
yeah,
Generally at the VA, it's kind of the standing philosophy is every time you fix a problem, you create more. And the tendency is to just let the status quo keep going. You
right,
know, and which isn't right. It's not the right answer. I mean, nobody in the military would ever accept that. Um, but a lot of the people that are the nurses, the providers, and the administrative people, they're not veterans themselves.
yeah,
They may have a relative that was a veteran, but there's a lot of that have no meaningful interaction with the military, which again causes stress interacting with the veterans.
right.
So it's definitely a unique rat's nest of issues, and
Yeah, it'll be interesting, man. The government, how I don't, you know, I, I I don't trust anything they say the government says anymore. It's like, okay, I don't just it's the same old deal. Like I always say, I don't want to hear you talk about that shit. Just go do it.
yeah,
Show me, and I'll believe it. But
yeah,
I don't want to hear you talk about it, because most of the time when people just talk and talk and talk and talk and talk about it, that means they're not going to do it. They're just
yeah,
they're just saying it,
yeah,
and that's been the experience, obviously. I mean, you know, so that's why the VA is still where it's at.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because they've been talking about this shit since I was a kid. You
Yeah.
know, been going on since we were kids, and this is still the same. Like you said, it's a interesting take that the socialized medicine thing. Like, yeah, y'all just go hang out in that. You want it? Y'all come hang out in it for a while.
Yeah.
See how you like it.
Unfortunately, it is very it's a very poignant thing I've realized over time, that the VA is socialized medicine. It's exactly what would happen if the government ran healthcare. And if I don't think there's too many liberals at colleges that would be like, hey, you know what? I'll willingly get all my care from the VA,
Right.
my insurance from my job, you know, to go and get care at the finest hospitals in the world. Yeah, it's free. The VA is free. For a lot of people, it's free. The great thing about it is that even if it's not free for you, for the individual veteran, they can only charge you one copay a day. That's it. If you load up 20 appointments that day, and you're seeing a cardiologist or you're seeing a somebody else, they can only charge you one copay out of all of those appointments for that day.
No shit. I didn't know that.
Yeah, so there's a lot of incentive for people to utilize the VA. And the more veterans that utilize the VA, the better the VA will get, because it's a great example is this. Anybody who's been in the military will understand exactly what I'm saying, right? So when you're training, the military gives you go to your XO or whoever else will reach out to where you're going training at and say, hey, ammo supply point. I need 25,000 rounds of 5.56 to do this training for my unit. You go, you do your training, you get it done in 10,000, and you show back up to the ammo supply point. You got 10,000 rounds left. 15,000 rounds left, and you turn them in. Right. Next training cycle comes around, you say the same thing. I need 25,000 rounds. Nope, you're getting 10 because you got the training done the last time. 10,000 rounds, and we don't think you need the extra 15. That's how the VA works. The more veterans that are in it, the more we're getting our hands into it, the more we're pulling from the pot, the bigger
I got.
that pot gets. And
I
that's
got.
the federal government. If the federal government looks at your funding and says, man, you guys did this all with, $25 million. You don't need 30.
Right.
And we have this new wing that we just opened and we need to hire providers. We need to do all these other things. And the VA's they're looking at it going, well, you got it done before with this budget,
Yeah.
and then they have to wait the entire fiscal year until they get to the next budget. You know, um, so yeah, the more veterans that utilize the system, and then the VA needs to do a way better job of getting at these. Like, so when you exit the military, there should be an entire VA office at
Right.
every base that says, "Hey, we're going to get you enrolled. We're going to get your eligibility established now." You
Yeah.
know, and we don't worry in 10, 15 years. You could sit on your eligibility for a while, not ever go to the VA, but you're in the VA system. That's
Right.
you don't have to wait for the VA to catch up to you, because the VA is like, okay, we've already got him. We know who he is. We know where he's at eligibility wise. We've got it already established. Uh, you don't have to see a provider. And then you can also keep your private provider. If you have private insurance, the VA doesn't care. You can still get all, like, if you want to go to your primary care doctor on the outside and get treated out there because you get seen faster and you feel like it's a better standard of care, more power to you. But use the VA as well.
Right.
The medication that you're getting hit, for with a copay from your HMO, you might get for free at the VA.
Right.
Or the orthotics that you get from your outside doctor, the VA might be able to give it to you for
Yeah.
free. It,
Yeah.
it
So
it's
you're able to. It's almost like you're. I mean, anybody else be in trouble for double dipping. It's like,
is no for double dipping. Quite frankly, we don't care. Now
yeah.
the VA oftentimes ask veterans for their insurance card, and that's something that, again, that's another thing the VA doesn't do well explaining. So what they're doing is they're trying to they're it's called the ICB insurance capture, and you have VA. What it'll do is I'm 100% service connected. I even my insurance gets billed from time to time for the VA. Right, it doesn't affect my copay, and it doesn't affect anything like that. It doesn't show up on my bill at all.
I
What
got you.
VA in its efforts to recoup some of the funding, let's say for Tylenol or Band or something along those lines, the nickel and dime stuff, that they do during healthcare. The VA will reach out to a veteran's HMO and say, "Hey, we're covering the cost of all this care already. Is there a way that you guys can pick up the nickel and dime stuff?" And then the great part about that is all of that money goes back to that specific VA. So if you're in Cincinnati getting care and you're utilizing the ICB, that money that they recollect, which it's usually never very much, but it still comes back and goes into the VA in Cincinnati's budget for working with veterans. So it's a good thing to have established. Um, but it's also, again, getting in the VA, like starting at a unit. The day somebody ETSs or PCSs out of the military, we need to have guys there. Like, I had to go through my clearing packet. I had to go to all these different stations
Yeah.
everywhere. I had to, clear with housing. I had to, even though I didn't have any housing, I had to clear with these people and clear dental and clear with these people. It makes no sense why we shouldn't be having people clear with the VA.
So there's no interaction with VA stuff when you get out.
Well, not from when I got out. There was not. And even today, I don't see it very often. I could be wrong, but
Like you said, it's like if they probably know, they know the same thing. The more people involved in it, the better it's going to be. So why wouldn't they make it a point to go,
yeah,
hey, you need to go sit in this class, whatever it is, to talk all about the VA, tell them so they can explain to you exactly what you need to do.
yeah.
Get involved with them right now, right from the start, name all your stuff in there so they can get rolling. And you're not, I mean, man, you would think that would be a
You'd think they'd be
top
recruited
priority.
as well. You know,
Yeah,
I mean, you're getting a large, section of people that, you tell everybody every day, these are the best of the best of the best, coming out of the military. And you'd think they'd be sitting there with a job counselor as well saying, "Hey, we've got all the, I mean, I'm not the smartest man on earth and I'm by no means the most talented or gifted person, but and prior to me working at admin, I'd never done a desk job in my life,
right,
but I found out they
right,
taught, and we have a lot of veterans. One of the biggest issues we have with veterans is that time in between when they leave the military and when they finally life catches up to them and they finally say, okay, now I've got to get my head on right and start, being a contributing member of society. That time frame right there is so dangerous for a lot of them, especially young. You come out. When I got out, still wartime, and I spent a year and a half just drinking, just every Tuesday or Wednesday to Friday or Wednesday to Sunday. I'd go out and hang out with my friends, and I did nothing of really. I didn't set myself up for success later in life. I didn't utilize the opportunities that were for me. I just, some of it was decompressing from the war, in the military. Some of it was, I was young and I didn't get the college experience, whatever. Um, but having, like I said, having a recruiter or somebody that pull these guys in, be like, "Hey, listen, we're going to get you a great job starting off, and
yeah,
you're going to get great benefits. All of your benefits from the military then will roll into this job. And
yeah,
you serve 5 years in the job, right? You serve 4 years in the military. You're going to come out and you can buy back those 4 years instantly, which gives you 4 years in the job, and then you only have to work for another 16 years before you have a full retirement.
yeah.
It, there's not a lot that's done as far as getting out there and recruiting, and
And
being in things.
that's that, man. It's funny. So this route I used to take to my fire station in the mornings had two routes, and one of the routes I'd go to, there was these three dudes that they lived under an overpass, and I'd started, stopping because I'd stop and get coffee or something. I just grabbed three coffees. When I'm passing by, hey, stop at the stoplight. Hey, you want some coffee? Whatever. Kind of got to know them. All three of them, Army vets, and I got to where I would bring them donuts, and I'd actually get out of the truck and go sit under the overpass with them sometimes and just shoot the shit with them.
Yeah.
They're cool there. They're just like, because I wanted to know, like, man, what are you doing here? Like, why are you here? Like, and you're like, and you're talking more. You talk to them, you're like, these are three smart dudes. Like,
Yeah.
they're not stupid. They're, and all three of them got out, like you said, that time between getting out and trying to figure out their life or whatever, decompressing thing, that's what got them. And they had been homeless ever since.
Yeah.
And so they're just like, those three guys got together and they're living that way. And what was surprising to me, and I've had this conversation with Cliff, Dean, and several other guys, and even my brother talks about it. Man, there are some veterans. They're like, nah, this is exactly how I want to live. I don't want to go live normal. I'm fine where I'm at. And so, in that sense, what do? Right? There's not a lot you can do. It's like even those guys, we would take homeless people and they were veterans and they wouldn't go to the VA.
Yeah.
It'd be like, nah, just take me to Baylor or just take me to Parkland.
Like that, it's because they already know they've reached the limit of what they can milk from the VA. As far as we all had those guys. Hey, I'm blind drunk, 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm on the street. I want a hot cot and a sandwich.
Yeah.
Run them down to the ER, and you get in the ER. The first thing the charge nurse does is look at you in the face, and she gives you that look, like, "Why'd you bring him here?
Right.
You all know who this guy is. Why'd you bring him here? You're
Right.
like, I got to. I don't have a say in this. I don't get to tell people.
Right. Yeah,
You know,
man. It's like I said, that the system. The more we talk about it, it's how broken it is. It's broken in numerous different categories, not just
it's a mess.
not just from the government standpoint, but from the veterans standpoint, from from the whole thing. Man, well, man, that was, I that's a lot of insight I didn't know, and I think there's probably a lot of people like me who weren't in the military that have these same conversations and they don't understand either. Maybe that'll help them. So I appreciate that. So we talked about this before. We're gonna take 1 second, y'all. Hey, go check out lifewarriorunited.com. That's the website. All of our gear, the Life Warrior United gear is on there. The shop's on there. You can order. And anything you order or buy off that shop just is going to help build a better podcast. We're going to put the money together to get better equipment. Hopefully, get out of this, living room of mine and, where I got to worry about dogs and, and kids, and we can get somewhere where it's a little bit more private to where it's not as hard to set up. But yeah, go check out the website, lifewarriorunited.com. Check out the YouTube page, Life Warrior YouTube page, where Tyler and everybody else's podcast is on there. So moving on, firefighter also for a time, and these two, we can put these two together. We talked about brotherhood in the fire service and this victim mentality thing. So I'll tell you a little bit about, my thoughts on it, and you can chime in and just, we'll talk about this thing. But when I first got in, and I'm sure it's the same for you, when I first got in, I was, man, gung ho. This firefighter. I was an athlete growing up. Being part of the team was, big to me. And so I'm like, man, this is a brotherhood that's been around since Roman times, and and it's gonna be awesome to be part of this brotherhood. And for the most part, it was like, when I first got in '98, it was still a lot of what I would consider old school firefighter mentality. Of course, man, it don't matter where you are, it don't matter. you always got the ones who, you always have those ones that don't understand brotherhood at all, and they never will. And so, but for the most part, I felt like that's what it was like. And as time went on, I feel like city politics plays a part in it and how they view it. But I remember after 9/11, same as you, when you went, you chose to go into the military after 9/11 and do your part. I was already in the fire department. And, when on 9/11, I just got off shift. I'd stopped at the gym to work out, and my wife was pregnant with our first kid. And 14 days later, or 11 days later, he was born. And, so, it, it, that brotherhood continued. Like man, I remember, you know, guys saying, man, we got guys showing up for our tests that are lawyers from Arizona. They quit their lawyer job to come join the fire department here. And, and so I was like, man, this is cool. It's a terrible way to bring that brotherhood in, but I thought it was a shot in the arm. Like, man, cool. This is going to, and everybody sees how important it is to have first responders and all that. And, and, but again, man, as time has gone by, that people forget, I I did a video not long ago talking about that on 9/11 going, one day after, everybody's posting, no, never forget. This now firefighters and police and all this. One day later, it's back to who'd you vote for? You're a liberal, you're a left, you're a right.
Yeah.
It's this whole thing. I'm like, it took y'all one day, and you came in. Everybody's like, oh, we're all part of this thing, and one day later, y'all hate each other again, and you forgot about the sacrifice those people made for people they didn't even know.
Yeah.
And so, man, over time I've witnessed, and I see it. I understand people's mindset changes, and we've talked about this generational stuff. How the younger people today, for me, I don't see, and maybe you tell me if you see the same. Service is not anywhere in their mindset.
Well, I think that I do think we have an issue today with a lot of kids. I don't think it's all kids. I know
Yeah,
their school that they go to requires them to do public service. Um, I think that we live in a society that it's very hard to not be an individual, to not think like an brotherhood requires by name you to basically remove your ego and
yeah,
become part of something greater than you. And it's hard when you have a culture that idolizes individuals over, the group. Like, you look at the Super Bowl, and we don't talk about the team in general, right? We don't go ooh and ah over the team. We go ooh and ah over the quarterback, or we ooh and ah over the running back, or the wide. You don't hear anybody ooh and ah over the offensive line. You know, without those
right.
guys, it goes nowhere. That being said, as a society, you know, you see a lot of parents that just are too inconvenienced by bringing their kids down to that level. I mean, they can't even be coached. As a coach, I coach
Yeah,
my kids. Like, at no point like when I grew up, it was not uncommon to have a coach grab you by the face mask, yell at you, get in
yeah,
your butt a little bit, and try to bring that out of you and motivate you. You can't do that with kids anymore, because the kids will react to it wrong. Because that's the thing, kids today are no different than kids were 1,000 years ago. They're
yeah.
impressionable, they're moldable, they'll do whatever they'll go the directions you.
Yeah,
It's the parents that are the problem. They stand to see somebody else yell at little Jimmy or little Bob, little Susie. So they come into this, and like you said, it goes to your victim mentality. It's really hard to be a victim when you're a true member of a brotherhood, because you
yeah,
don't time because
Yeah.
you like, I don't have time to dwell in my self pity or dwell in my own sorrows because I have a job that if I'm not present for, that next man up is going to suffer. And I care too much about that next man up, the man after. And I care too much about that team and being in that position and doing that position, even if it's insignificant, but doing that job to the best of my ability. And kids don't get taught that anymore. I
Yeah.
mean, it's not uncommon for kids to go their entire life and not have a job before they go to college. You
Yeah.
know, it's not uncommon for kids to play sports and never really have like a coach meaningfully yell at them or be coachable.
Right.
Uh, so it's really a society issue with it that stems that. Now, like you said it perfectly. 9/11 hits, cause, effect. You have a whole generation of guys that went out and joined the military or joined the fire service because they were inspired by the events of 9/11. They were either angry about terrorists and wanted to get revenge, or they were inspired by the selfless acts of bravery that came from the firefighters and police that died that day.
Yeah.
One way or another, they were inspired. So that's great. That's recruitment. Period. Pearl
Right.
Harbor, the line around the corner. No, none of those guys would have joined the army. Nobody was, biting, kicking down doors to join the army before
Right.
Pearl Harbor. So
Right.
that's kind of just a universal. Nobody wants to be that first one in line. It's hard. Being part of a brotherhood is hard. There's
Yeah.
nothing that's called a brotherhood that isn't really, really hard.
Yeah.
Firefighters hard. It's waking up 3 o'clock in the morning to deal with toe pain. It's it ain't all saving babies and kissing ladies. You know it's a hard job. And same thing with police and being a veteran. And we live in a very comfortable country. I mean,
Oh yeah.
everybody's got Wi-Fi now. Everybody. I mean, look at the things that get you mad on a daily basis. I was looking at the other day. I got mad because I couldn't get onto Wi-Fi at this place. I'm like, ugh. But in reality, it's like, dude, calm down. 5 minutes. You grew up
Right.
your life without access to any of this stuff. Why do you
Yeah.
care now? But it's because we've become complacent, and we sit back and we just really just dig into that comfort level. And, it's hard to get a young kid and be like, hey, listen, check it out, buddy. Up north, right? So we have dry hydrants. It's going to be hard to get a kid and be like, hey, check it out. It's going to be 3 o'clock in the morning on a Friday. All of your friends are out at the bars or going home with the ladies. You're going to be rolling up hose, 5-inch hose on a job site, and it's going to be soaking wet. There's water everywhere. Your turnout gear's soaking wet. If you got rubber boots, there's probably water in your boots,
Yep.
and you did this all for a smoke alarm, you know,
Yeah.
or you did this all for a little bit of fire up the chimney.
Right.
It's hard to tell a young man that when it's like, or you could go
Yeah.
to college and you could drink on the weekends and chase girls.
It's-
But the ones that you do get that are willing to make that sacrifice, willing to accept that, those are the ones though that actually make it into the brotherhood. Anybody
Right.
who worked in the fire service knows there's a revolving door. There's a lot of young dudes that want to come in and they want to do the sexy part of the job. But what they don't want to do is they don't want to mop the bunk room. They don't.
Right.
They don't want to do the laundry. They don't want to cook the meals or unload the dishwasher. They don't
Yeah.
want to do any of this stuff because they don't. They just want the fun. They don't
Right.
want the iceberg of menial crap that goes into it.
Well,
That
you got young guys that'll, hey, you're the rookie. You got to go wash the engines, or you got to go,
don't
and
sit on the couch, don't watch the TV.
yeah, instead they they log complaints, but they go above chain of command, around chain of command, because to them it don't matter. That chain of command thing doesn't register.
Oh, they've always been able to go to mommy and daddy.
And so they go right around to the top. Hey, they're harassing me. They're forcing me to do things they won't do. And to me, there's a lot of it now where before the chief would be like, why are you up here?
Yeah.
You
Starts
know,
counting five.
why are you, I'm going to write you up for being up here going around chain of command. That's what's
Yeah.
fixing to happen. And now it's, man, they jump right in. Hey, y'all need to chill out on this kid. And y'all need to, The rules changed. The rules have changed, and so they've gotten exactly what they wanted, right? And which has been always. And so we have kids that come in already with that entitlement thing. Like, wait, wait a minute, wait, I gotta go shop. I gotta do all the shopping, and I gotta collect all the money, and I gotta pay for it, and then make change,
Yep.
and then I gotta wash dishes and stuff. Wait, that's no, that's not how this works. And guys they'll absolutely refuse. And like you said, just like in the B8, there's no recourse. A it's an act of God to get rid of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think that's part of it. And I don't know what the difference, if there's a difference up north and down here. I just know what I see down here is that it's definitely hurt the fire service, where, we'd have a test for the fire department, and, you'd have at my department, it was small, and we'd be hiring for two positions, and you'd have 150, 200 guys showing up for two positions. Now they just send out deals going, hey, just send in your resume. We'll get your resume and we'll call you in for an interview and a physical. They don't even have to go take the test,
Yeah.
because people don't even show up
Yeah.
to take the test. It's like, and there you go. It's like that entitlement thing. Like, oh, they want me. They're reaching out to me because they need me, And man, it is, to me, I think it's changing. I don't know if that's the same up there.
It is. It's a little different up here, I think, because we have joint fire and EMS, and it kind of like to get a career. Most career positions outside of the actual CFD, the Cincinnati Fire Department, you have to be a medic in addition to a firefighter too. In some cases, they make it even more. All these different wild hazmat certifications, high angle, low angle, water, cold water, all these other certifications. Well, so that does a little bit of the filtering out of those kids, because I mean there's not too many entitled kids that can get out that utilize their own ability to go out prior to working in the department and get those certifications. So I think help with that a little bit. But at the end of the day, I think there's always, in my situation where I worked career, it was the situation where I wanted to always lead from the front when I did something. So if we got a new guy that needed to be trained, I need training too constantly. I need to get out there and open up the doors of the truck. I worked at multiple trucks tend to mix together over time in your head. So you're like, the right fifth door, what's in there? And you're like, oh, where am I at? And the big thing for me was just, if the new guy's going to be out there, and this is one thing that's different from the military and the fire service, and I do think the fire service could learn a little bit of. If there's a new guy there, and you got a problem with their behavior, that's really your problem, not their problem, right?
Yeah.
It stems from leading from the front. And if this kid's just out in the bay, got all the doors of the truck open, but you can't see him, you know where he's at. He's hiding somewhere on the phone, right?
Yeah.
So he's not actually getting the training. But you know what he's not going to be doing? You know how he's not going to be on his phone? Is if you're out there going over the truck with yeah, your old heads, your drivers, your senior guys, don't mess with them. They get the recliner. They do their thing, whatever they want all day. But younger, newer guys that aren't necessarily, brand new or got years into the job, those young dudes need to learn from you, because that's also how you build trust between two people on how you build the brotherhood is mutual suffering. If you're all right, well, we got to drag all this stuff out. We got to teach this guy how to do the basics of, tying a Swiss seat, or, how to set up, a low angle or high angle rope system. You got to get out there with the kid, and my big thing was keeping him exhausted too. Always kept their minds, especially the younger 18, 19, 20-year-old kids, open the bay or not open the bunk room and start, you don't necessarily have to get your bunker gear on and go in there and spread cancer everywhere, but on their knees doing searches, doing right hand search, left hand search, how to toss, room when you're doing it. talk to them about how to break a ceiling.
Yeah. It
Uh-huh.
was funny. When I was a partner, we spent, I don't remember, $1 million building this really high tech, uh, training facility, 3-story building, gas piped. I mean, you name it,
Dude,
all the work for this thing. And everybody was like, "Oh man, fine," And then we rare we rarely got to go use it. They he would let other departments rent it out as a way to make money.
yeah,
And I'm like, and then we'd go, "Well, we're gonna go train," and he's like, "Well, there's we can't break y'all up. We can't have the engine, the truck, and the med over there at the same time. So, engine, you go train first, and then the truck switch out." And you're like, "Well, we're training to fight fire. We we do this together. I mean, how do you it's like,
yeah,
so, we're gonna show up at a fire and we haven't been training together, and it's just a weird new
yeah.
mindset, that we were dealing with. And for me later on, I was like, man, it's time for me to book out of here. But, I remember it's like I was telling people, somebody a while back, they were like, well, how did they develop it and this whole brotherhood thing when you started? And I was like, man, it wasn't, I said, shoot, man, in my first interview with the guys I was going to be working with, they set me in a room with them, a bunch of old heads and some of the newer guys. And the first question one of the guys asked was, "Hey, boy, what are you going to do if we decide to hold you down and spray paint your balls blue?" you know, and, I was like, what do you do? How do you answer it? And so you realize who you're sitting in there with. And it was like, well, there's 10 of you in here. So you'll get it done, but there's going to be 1 or 2 of you missing a tooth or have a black eye before it gets done. I promise you that. I'm not going to just let you, you
Yeah.
know, and it was like to them going, all right, and those were and that's how it was. I mean, man, they would beat the dog out of you. They would handcuff you to the stove, and
But that's
and,
brotherhood though, because
and that's what people are like, well, that's
here,
now you do that to some of these younger guys now. And man, whew. And I'm like, but to me, that was great. It, if they didn't do that to you, you knew you weren't part of it. They didn't want you there.
yeah,
And, to me, it's that soft, I always say this, there's a softness now. And like you said, it came from maybe how parents were raised those kids now. 'Cause they thought, well, I got, I got it handed to me by my parents. I'm going to be a little bit easier. This whole, I'm going to trophies for even being last place and the whole, I feel like that's where it's gone. And the chief asked me one time, because I went and got a master's degree, when I was working. And, and they asked me, what do you think is one of the problems with the fire service? And I said, education. He was like, what? I was like, yeah, education is a bad problem with fire department. It's like, what do you mean? You got a master's degree from it and all this stuff. I go, no, you understand. This is a blue collar position. This job is what it is. And you have focused so much energy on finding the most highly educated and trying to get these highly educated people in here, that computers and this whole thing. And you forgot that you still have to fight fire, drag hose, kick doors in, get bled on, pissed on, shit on, brains. Yeah, you forgot that part. And those people don't want any part of that. To them, the fire department, this is all about education. I'll go teach paramedic school and I'll teach that. I'm like,
yeah.
man, this is a blue collar job, man. No matter how hard you try to make it not, it always will be. And, and so I feel like that's part of this softness that's sunk in.
A lot
Uh,
of So one thing I've noticed, like as far as up here goes, well, again, I don't. The only reason I keep saying that is because I'm not very familiar with the way firefighting stuff is south. I do know that there's different, but I'm not. I don't want to speak to those. You're absolutely right. It is a blue collar job. And the best firefighters, almost all of them, have spent time in construction because that's the thing. So much of the job requires you skill sets. You got to know what tools are. You got to know how to use the tools. If you're gonna like, I mean, it's basic things like cribbing and stabilization and understanding these things. It's not it's not all dragging a hose and
Yeah.
stuff. You know, it's a lot of it is very basic tool usage, shovels, picks,
Yeah.
hooks, things like that. And
Yeah.
I think what does happen a lot of I know up here is that you have those dudes. You have the dudes that you want. Like anybody who's worked in a good hard charging department, not these hit it hard from the yard types, but the guy,
Yeah.
hey, I want to kick indoors, secure the door, search the front step, and then I want to do it right hand, left hand, aggressive search.
Yeah.
Then I want my engine company to come behind me and stretch lines, catch the hydrant, and get at it.
Yeah.
You got to find those guys that want to get at it, and you're
Right.
looking for them in the right place. And it's hard when, in order to get a full time job, you got to have both your medic and your firefighter one and two. And
Yep.
I think you'd get a better quality of firefighter if it was a situation where somewhere in that area you figured out how to bring them on and then over time get them their medic. I know there's a lot of departments that'll say like you have to have your medic within a year, you have to have your medic within these different times, right? But it's medic school's hard. Medic school's hard. It
Yeah.
walks a lot of people out. It takes 2 or 3 times, but I do think that you know having a situation where you can recruit, cultivate individuals would make a big difference in that. And kind of to the point too about how you have those young new guys that come in and they're not ready for it. They're not ready for that level of thing. They're not ready for that level of culture that comes out of the firehouse. Uh, you know, that goes back to the administration and the chiefs. Like it all stops there. If the chief or the administration says, "Hey, listen, I'm gonna give this all to the chief." The chief is going to be the one who directs this, right? And that
Right.
down at these kids and goes, "You got two options: take your crap and go home, or get out there and wash the truck. Get
Yeah.
out and deal with the shenanigans." Because guess at the end of the day, all that BS. Yeah, you got your keys frozen in a bowl of water. Yeah,
Right.
all that stuff is just indicative of all the different members of that department trying to bring you in. You deal
Yeah.
with your crap. You go through your stuff. You get, smoked working out there in the bay, right? You
Yeah.
work out alongside the guys, and you might have one dude that just beats you, breaks you off, right?
Yeah.
That you're going to get a lot of criticism for the way you cook or your inability to cook.
Right.
But all of that is just the growing pains of bringing you into the brotherhood because
Yeah.
2 years you're going to wake up 2 years down the line and you're sitting on the couch and there's a
Yeah.
dude and he's now going through all that stuff, right? And then guess what, you're now established in the brotherhood, you're a made man. But
Yeah.
you got to put that work in. You got to get crapped on in order for you to ingratiate yourself with the rest of the members of your truck, your ladder. You're going to do time on the bus, a lot of time on the bus, because quite frankly, you can't be trusted to do anything else.
Right. Yeah.
And you earn trust through training. The more you
Yeah.
the more you show up on your days off to learn,
Right.
the more trust you're going to get. The more rides in the truck you're going to get. You're going to ride backstep more on the truck. But
Yeah. And when you don't train, it's like for me, it's like when you don't. We had that whole system. When you don't train, it's hard to find those guys. Like 'cause you don't know. You're gonna show up at a fire and go, man, is this kid? I'm gonna turn around and look, and he's gonna be gone. He's not gonna even be here. It's gonna be hot, and he's gonna decide I don't want to do this no more, and he's gonna be gone. You don't know, because you haven't ever trained with him, you know, and that's a cultural thing too in the fire department. When your chief says, training is not important. This training tower is important because
Yeah,
it gets us money.
that's
It makes more
really,
money to buy better equipment, but I don't mean we're going to use it. You know,
who cares? Got the latest, greatest thermals and
right?
SPAs. If your guys suck a tank down in 2 seconds because they're just not equipped and they don't have the muscle memory from
Yeah.
doing the job, then great, we have the best equipment, but we're still hitting it hard from
Right.
the, you
Or
know.
the kids don't even know how to start a chainsaw or change the oil or do. It's like,
Yeah, yeah. What's
eh,
borrowed? What's down?
yes,
You know,
yeah, man. So this whole, I don't know if we talked about the victim mentality. I know I experienced some of that with some of the younger guys when I was late in my career in the fire department, where it was there was a lot of blame. It's like it's because of him or because there was saw a lot of that, and I see a lot of it. I feel like I see a lot more of it now in every every walks of life, and now it seems like it's carrying over into older. And you see it on the news and on TV, older adults, where it's always somebody else's fault. And the reason I'm in the position I'm in is because of somebody else, or, this happened, that happened. And, and I feel like, again, goes back to the whole, like I talked about, the make America masculine again. When it comes to men, I feel like it's the reason, there's so many single moms. There's, you know, people who are, well, I was talking to a guy yesterday about doing one of the guys on my podcast went to college, got out of college, things didn't work out for him, ended up homeless for 2 years. Super talented graphic artist, fought his way out of this hellhole of being homeless, and now has created not one but two but three different businesses of graphic artist stuff in San Antonio. And so we were having a conversation, just kind of got into it, and he was like, "Man, these people, they don't want to work. People don't want to work anymore." And he even said it. He was like, they instantly go to, well, I can't because, or, I need help on this because, or, this is too hard because. And he's like, when all in reality is they just, they've been ingrained in that victim mentality so much that they don't know what else to do, and they just don't want to work. And I mean, I don't know if you see that where you are. I don't know if it's that way. I've had people tell me, guys that were in the military, say that there's guys in the military that are like that. And I guess it's just, I don't know if it's, do you think it's worse now than it was 50 years ago?
I don't necessarily know if anything is across the board. I don't know if anything is actually truly worse than it was 50, 60 years ago. I think that we live in a unique society where we can convey information across the country and the globe quicker
Yeah.
than 24 hours. So it's kind of like one of those things that is like, is it really worse today than it was years ago, or is it just easier to see it?
Yeah.
Uh, I do think that the victim mentality is. I think it's a part of everybody. It's one of those dark aspects of the human nature that is very alluring, and it's very toxic, and it's very it's hard to it's hard when people have so much they view their whole life as they have these failures, and then they never get taught personal accountability or communal punishment, because those are two great ways to get rid of the victim mentality. And when I was in the military, I did not have we did you would have guys that had that victim mentality, but they were very quickly gotten rid of. Right, we'd either pick them out or they'd move to some other unit or something like that. But the two ways really I saw, and I had throughout my life, get rid of victim mentality, especially young men, is personal responsibility. slowly build them up with tasks that they can complete, measurable things that they can complete, that they can then turn around and look at. Okay, well, maybe I can do this.
Right.
You'll punish. If you say, "Oh, listen, you failed, but we're all going to get punished for it," and you just keep that moving on them, and they're like, finally, it gets to the point where they're like, "All right, either society, either the squad, platoon, whatever, corrects the issue with them,
Yeah.
they are like, I have to raise it up. I have to keep moving it up because I'm letting a lot of people around me down." You know,
Yeah.
um, those are two ways I've seen been the most effective with the victim mentality. Uh, as far as young kids today, it's like we said, there's a lot of parents that are afraid of pain. They don't want their kids to suffer in any way, shape, or form. And whether that suffering is uh, the results of their own actions. Oh, I got mad, threw a fit, threw my toy across the room, and now it's broke. Oh well, man,
Yeah.
it's broke now. You
Yeah.
know, or it's you know, my kid goes to school and has behavioral issues at school, and the first thing the parents do is go to the teacher and go, "What are you doing wrong with my kid?"
Yeah.
And you're not looking at your kid going, "What on
Yeah.
earth are you doing?" You know, um, in coaching with sports, you got if you want your every parent thinks their kid's going to play at the next level. They don't
Right.
they don't worry about the most crucial part of it is teaching your kids to be coachable, to take criticism, to be yelled at, to not just be completely wrecked when an adult raises their voice to you. You know,
Right.
like I grew up with, we used to have, the way I was treated when I was a kid, as far as coaches go and stuff, would probably be considered,
Man. Yeah.
you know, um, but it's being able as a young person to be able to see that you survived that and you didn't break
Yeah.
is really good towards self accusation. Oh, I can never say that word right.
Yeah. I get. Yeah.
Being able to realize that, hey, I am strong enough. Hey, I am capable enough. I'm powerful enough to be able to do this. And getting out of your kid's way. Oh my God! Stop intervening in your kid's life. Let them make mistakes. Let them jump on
Yep.
the playground. Let them, you know, say the word in public and catch the whooping. Like
Yep.
these are the things that teach kids to deal with these things. And it's never. I've seen a lot of parents where it's never the kid's fault. It's they got ADHD. Well, I have
Yeah.
ADHD as well. My kids have ADHD as well. That's not an excuse to let your kids just run around and be crazy.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
you know, it's
Well,
one
it's
of those.
funny. My dad coached high school football for his entire life, and he was old school. He played college sports too. He was a good athlete, but he was, and he had 4 sons, and he coached us all. And man, he was he was hard nosed. He was old school, disciplinarian kind of guy. And I tell people this all the time, and they're like, some people I'll tell this to, and they'll go, "Oh my gosh, that's so abusive," you know, you know, what I said, that kind of stuff. And but he told when I was a kid, I remember that he told me one time, there's two rules in that I'm having this house. One is don't do dumb shit, and if you do, have the balls to take the punishment you got coming. And don't expect me. I'll have your back, but don't expect me to get you out of it.
Yep.
I ain't getting you out of it. I'll be there if you need me, but I ain't getting you out of it. If you rightfully deserve the punishment you're fixing to get, take it.
Do
You
the
got to take it.
time.
And the second one, people really was like, man, he told you that as a kid, and he was like, number two, don't be a pussy. And I told him later in life, I said, I think now you could swap the two. Number one should be first because there's a lot of that, where, like you said, that just you get wrecked if you get yelled at by somebody, or, if whatever, if there's any sort of conflict or struggle that happens, where you just cave because you've been coddled or whatever, or never had to. And it's the same instance. We have this I don't know if you've heard any stories about what happened to my daughter this last year, where she had the kid from school use an AI app to generate naked photos of her when she was 14. send them all over Snapchat, yeah, everywhere. And
Sorry to hear
it's
that.
been awesome. It's been awesome because now, you haven't seen, if you Google my daughter's 9 Meal series, she's been on the Good Morning America. She's been Fox and Friends. She's all over the world. She's been in Japan, UK, and there's a federal law that passed the Senate and is trying to go through the House. Didn't make it this time, but it's a law that will actually punish people for doing it, for using AI to do it. Well, this kid was in her class, and the school's reaction was, well, we'll give him a couple of weeks on campus suspension, then he'll be back in class with her. So you just have to learn to deal with him being back in class with you. And I'm like, wait a minute. You're just go, that's it? They're like, well, yeah, that's all we can do. And instead of his, I even told him, like, if the school would have done the right thing, or his parents would have done the right thing, we probably wouldn't even be doing all this now.
Yeah.
But, the mom, instead of reaching out and going, can't believe this and that, it was a text to us, basically asking to let it go, because she was worried about her other younger kids and stuff getting bullied for it all. Wasn't, I'm sorry, and we're going to, no apologies from the kid, the dad. I'm like, this is where dad, if that was my son,
Oh yeah.
and, no apology, no nothing. Instead, they pulled him out of the school. They lawyered up, and basically this kid received absolutely zero punishment for what he did. And, so when he got 2 months probation or something. And so when he turns 18, that'll be off his record. Nobody will ever know.
Yeah.
Whereas I got fake naked pictures of a 14-year-old kid of mine that'll be out there forever. So what does it teach the kid?
Nothing.
Yeah. I got zero punishment for what I had. People
Mom and dad will swing back in at some other late. I mean, the thing is, if he did this at that age and didn't suffer a massive consequence, he'll do it again.
Oh man, no
If
doubt.
and with my sons, I'm very confrontational because I know because they're both very much like me, and they really, again, like you said, it sounds horrible to say this, but it's the carrot and the stick mentality. Like, I'm going to try to give you the carrot, and
Right.
if that does not work, you'll get the stick. Now, I'm
Yeah.
not saying that I beat my kids with a stick, yeah,
Right.
but it's just an old euphemism
Yeah.
for discipline, and a lot of times the carrot doesn't work,
Yeah.
and because it's hard to get the results out of a person being nice to them. It just is. I mean, um, the stick is universal. You don't even need to know the same language as another person to issue discipline. You know, um, and kids today, there's a lot of. I mean, I've seen firsthand at like my son's daycare. They had a boy that lost control and was literally just wrecking the director's office. But but their solution to this was to put him in the office, let him wreck everything, and then call mom and dad to have him get him, and tell him, well, he's out of control. Yeah, he's out of control, but he ain't. He's lost his mind, but he ain't out of control. You can solve this.
Right.
I could walk in the room right now and solve this very short amount of time. And
Yep.
it's about physically checking people because kids learn the boundaries. They love boundaries. Like they love to push and bounce. They want to know where they're at and what the actual definitions of their world is, you know. And if they know that there is no final, like, hey, this line's crossed and dad or mom's gonna tune me up,
Yeah.
there's no end to it because they
Right.
know how to thrive without that rigid boundary between the two, and they react better to the physical discipline. I mean, anybody and their mother can be like, hey, go sit in timeout. They're going to go sit in timeout. They're like, oh, I know there are two things are going to happen. Either I can sit here and be quiet for the amount of time needed, and then I'll leave timeout, or I'm going to have annoying as heck in timeout until my parents give in and finally let me
Yeah.
go. Things happen with kids all the time, and
Yes.
you know, it is what it is.
Well, yeah, it's, people, my dad was, like I said, he was hard school and old school. And I mean, there was, I got dusted a few times, not with just belt or paddle or open hand. I mean, when I got older, it was, all right, man, we're going to figure out who runs this house today. You're the one trying to decide you want to. So we're going to figure it out today, and people would be like, oh my gosh, that's so mean. And I'm like, man, you don't understand. He was at his wit's end, and he knew the road I was traveling.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
was already in probation for stuff and doing, he knew the road I was traveling, and he's trying to save my life.
yeah,
And by doing that, he did 100%. You know, he he saved my life. I was going down some bad places, acting like a fool. And and so, but again, man, you don't see. I saw something not long ago, and I'm sure you've seen this. This lady, I think she's an educator, but I just saw it not too long ago, and she said they did what she's call it, they did a bad thing when they took discipline away from us, from the teachers. Said because the teachers became scared of the principals became scared of the superintendent became scared of the school board, and parents became scared of the kids, and the kids ain't scared of nobody.
yeah.
and and that's where we are. That's exactly where we're at. These They know they have zero fear of punishment, of anything like that, because they know there's not they're not going to get it. And the parents are even afraid of their kids. I've watched these parents, some of my friends, people I know, not necessarily friends, that have kids at this high school, and I'm like, like, talk about a soft. And this is where the soft men, you're talking about soft men create problems. And I watch it. My God, man, your kid is going to be shithead the rest of his life because you don't have the balls to check him. You don't have the balls to check him right now, like a man should. And so he doesn't know how to act like a man. Your son has no idea how to act like a man because he's never been taught. And man, I feel like that it's the victim mentality. All that is a epidemic, man, right now. And you see all the things going on in all these other cities, man, and
Well,
I feel part of it.
we have a big problem with this is probably going to be a very opinion, but we have a very big problem with feminization of every society nowadays. You know, I'm big 6'4", big, huge 300-pound plus guy. And, you know, anywhere I go, if I raise my voice, you would have thought I pulled a gun.
Right.
And that's kind of a situation where you got to look at things. You look at schools, like schools, 90% of the problem, it's like the debate on toxic masculinity, right? It's hard to say that these kids are being exposed to toxic masculinity when they spend 8 hours a day at school and every single teacher they run into, except for maybe the principal or the school resource officer, is a woman, you know?
Right.
And they're all well meaning. They try to be as loving as possible to these kids, but I'm all for that. But on the same note, there's my kids, they don't got that like shop teacher that would just walk the hallways and grab you up by the neck or grab you
Yeah.
collar of your shirt when you're doing something stupid. And they
Yeah.
don't, walking around throwing those casual insults at kids that are making out in the hallway for being ridiculous. They don't have that nowadays. There's no male checking of society, and everybody's going, why can't we? Why do we have all these problems? And it's, well, you took away literally one half of everything, which is the male response, and you've created this environment now where it's the easiest way to solve a problem is to act like you're a victim of the problem itself, not
Yeah.
responsible for the problem.
Right.
You could always run back to mom. You could always run, or dad in many cases, because there's a lot of dads that are afraid to just,
Oh,
for lack of a better term, grab your nuts and be a man. Sometimes
Yeah.
you got to let the mane out and run like a lion, you know?
Yeah.
And, you look at the things that, kids are taught. You take away the man, you take away the faith, you take away all these pillars of our society. We're slowly pulling away from our kids. And then we're sitting back going, why are they this way? Why are things so different today? Well, you've changed everything.
Yeah.
If you look at it, I mean, abuse is never acceptable. Never once. Abuse, whether it's emotional, physical, or sexual, is never, ever acceptable. But what we consider abuse is in today's society is really kind of a murky term, right? You know,
Yeah.
go to your local child protective services and you read what the things are there. You can in many states you can still spank your kid, but parents act like if I spank my kid and somebody sees it, then I'm going to lose my kids. And you're not though. You're not.
Yeah.
Sometimes
Yeah.
not only that, one of the biggest lessons you got to teach your sons is that, like, hey, there's right, there's wrong in this world, and I'm going to stand up for what's right. And if that means that something happens legally to me, I'm going to pay that price.
Yeah.
I'm not going to let you go out in public and act a fool, and without there being a consequence. And sometimes that consequence is that I read in your ass, right?
Yeah.
Bathroom kicking and screaming, and then, but the crazy thing is, every time I do it, things change,
Yeah.
always get better.
Well, yeah, it's like my dad, he said, he's like, I'm trying to let you know, like, I actually love you. People out there, they don't give a shit about you.
I love you and I want to protect my own name and what you're going
Right.
to be in the future. And that means
Yeah.
you're going to behave a certain way, and
Yeah.
there's going to be a standard in my family.
Right. Yeah. And that's what he said. He's like, you're going to come across people, you're going to cross the wrong person acting the way you act one of these days who doesn't love you. And what you get from them is not going to be what you get from me.
Sure.
You're going to end up in a hospital or a grave.
Yeah.
And so that was the lesson, man. I I think we covered a lot of good stuff here,
Yeah.
and I think there's more to come. Cliff and I had talked about getting a group together, not just two, but from different areas, administrators in schools, um, parents like dads, that kind of stuff, to get together to do like a podcast with 3 or 4 of us where we can bounce it off each other. I think that'd be a good idea, because I think there'd be more understanding. I know I've got one of my best friends. He's been in school administration for his entire career, and man, I don't know how. I don't know. I don't know how he's done it. I have no idea. And the school he's at, ooh, man. I mean, he's been made famous on TikTok a few times, and so having guys like that come in and talk, maybe give a better insight of what it looks like coming from an administration standpoint. Maybe it'll help me understand. But he has the same thoughts I do. If he could, I know him. If he could, he would. Yeah, lay hands down. But he's not. You're not allowed to anymore.
Sometimes
Even if they lay hands on you, you're not allowed.
yeah.
And that's a sad thing. Well, man, yeah, we'll put that together, and we'll just keep running with it. I think there's more to be talked about with all this. We just got to come up with the right topics.
Yeah. Down.
So y'all, appreciate Tyler coming on and talking about all this. All you veterans out there that are listening to it, I hope you got something from it. And all you people that have, maybe you got a parent or somebody who you're dealing with the VA with, and maybe you don't quite understand. Maybe I hope it gave you some insight on. It did me, and I don't, because I've never really dealt with the VA other than from a paramedic standpoint. So, it makes a lot more sense now than it did before. And so any of you people out there that love socialized medicine, dive in, go on in there.
Come on in.
Yeah.
Sam's always looking for more people to be soldiers, airmen, Marines. You know.
That's right. That's right. Well, man, I appreciate you coming on, and we'll put this thing out here, hopefully, tonight or tomorrow, and we'll see how I'll do some editing of it and make sure it's all good, and we'll put it out there. But I appreciate you coming on, talking about all these things, giving some insight on VA especially, and now we'll come up with some other topics, and we'll do it again.
All right, man. Sounds great.
All right, y'all. Again, go check out lifewarriorsunited.com, the website. Click on the shop, get your Life Warrior shirt, hat, hoodie. It all goes to eventually, hopefully, having us a Life Warrior podcast studio where we can do this a little bit more professionally, other than having kids walk by and dogs barking in the background and lawnmowers going. So, but yeah, go check it out and check out the YouTube page and pass all this along so we can get the message out there. Appreciate y'all. Y'all go again. Remember, like I always say, get up, go do Life Warrior shit today. Peace.